Welcome back to another episode of Surprise Mama,
where we talk about the shit they don't tell you.
Welcome to the Surprise Mama podcast,
where we like to talk about the shit that they don't tell you, or just, I don't know, the shit that people just prefer not to talk about. But we're here to talk about it.
But we're trying to now.
Yes.
I'm Ashley.
Thank you for introducing yourself.
Yeah, we always forget. So
I'm Molly.
And here we are. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
We kept meaning to record, but life got in the way, as it does with moms a lot of the time.
Just parenthood in general. Yeah. Fighting for our lives to get our kids to sleep. Sickness.
The kids getting you sick.
Yeah, and then us just getting sick and then getting our kids sick. And, just the circle of life, basically, we've been dealing with over here.
Never ending.
But we're back, baby.
Oh, yeah.
We're better than ever.
Yeah,
so,
we are.
Here we are.
At least we're doing something.
Yeah.
Fun fact,
holding
though,
mics.
we did mention this. We did actually record this episode like a week ago. I messed up the audio and video.
Did you, though? I feel like it was like that it was...
It was like a 50-50. The video was my fault. The audio was not my fault.
We had technical difficulties.
So
it's all wiped.
We're doing it again. So we also don't really remember much of it because I think we were both maybe sick when we recorded it. So...
Potentially.
So
Yeah.
We don't really know what we talked about. So this is going to still be really fresh. It's not like this is going to be...
It's a brand new conversation.
Yeah. It's a whole new brand conversation.
Brand
new conversation. Anywho.
But anyways, we're back. And we are talking about pregnancy loss this week.
A little bit of a heavier topic.
Slightly.
So yes, talking about pregnancy loss, we're going to focus on miscarriages. And the reason for that is I had a miscarriage before my daughter. So, we've had a few episodes so far in this podcast, and every single episode, there's been times where I've wanted to mention or just bring up the miscarriage, but we hadn't really had an episode on it yet. And I wanted to give this a whole episode, a whole topic before kind of mentioning it offhand. So that's what we're going to talk about right now.
Yeah. And we just felt it deserved a full conversation.
Yeah.
Isolated in itself, because it's not something we just wanted to breeze over.
No.
Because this is something that is very personal to Ashley, but also to many women. And it's still something that isn't widely discussed among women. But everybody processes this stuff differently. So, yes. So, Ashley, thanks in advance for sharing. I think per normal, you have, or per usual, what the heck?
Per usual.
Per usual. We'll go with per usual.
Yeah, per usual.
You have some facts for us.
I do. So, when I was going through, when I was going through my miscarriage, something for me that was very helpful was actually knowing more about miscarriages and knowing some of the facts behind it. And so these are some of the things that I found that were really helpful for me. So maybe you'll just find them interesting, or maybe they'll be helpful for you as well. But so one of the first things is that between 10 and 20% of pregnancies end in loss, which one seems like a high amount and two seems like a really large range, 10 to 20%. But that's because a lot of miscarriages tend to happen before a woman even knows she's pregnant.
Correct.
So, it'll happen before the 4 weeks. It'll happen even before. Some women don't even know they're pregnant until 6 or 7 weeks sometimes. So it just happens even before that. So what it is to the woman, it might just be a really heavy period. So they don't even think it's a miscarriage. It's just this is abnormal for me, but I'm just going to, go on with. But in reality, potentially that could have been missed. So I think that's what plays into that really high amount, but also high range, because you just don't really know.
Would it just be also something maybe their period's like slightly different, or
Yeah.
but like in timing as
Yes.
well. Okay.
Yeah, like maybe it's a little bit late or like a little
little early,
Yeah,
or-
it's really,
So it's hard to detect.
yeah, really hard to
at
detect.
times.
But,
Okay.
and the only way that you would know is if you had your HCG levels tested, which again, you wouldn't actually think about that if you just maybe had a heavier period.
Or perhaps if you were using the strips to test for
Yeah.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where you would know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So of those, that large range of 10 to 20%, 80% of those are in the first trimester before 10 weeks.
Yeah.
So in general, miscarriages tend to happen much earlier in the pregnancy. And from what I understand, and I looked this up, and I'm just going to say this. I didn't look it up 100%, so I'm not like 100% sure. But I think it's considered a miscarriage if it's before 22 weeks and then a stillbirth afterwards, because 22 weeks is the week. I'm pretty sure it's 22 weeks is the week of viability. So it's just kind of like, it's just kind of, language around it.
Yeah.
So the further you are in your pregnancy, the chance of a miscarriage or loss in general does decrease. Just because they, again, like, happens typically early in the pregnancy, and they typically happen because of some chromosomal issue, or your body just knows, oh, this is just not going to develop the way that it's supposed to, or the way that is suitable for life. So your body just kind of is doing that work, that is figuring it out. And I think I kind of felt this way a little bit. I think probably most women feel this way when they've had a miscarriage is, oh, it's my fault. Like I did something. Even when I was talking to my OB when I was going through this, she was like, you didn't do anything wrong. Like there's nothing that you could have done to prevent this. Yeah. It's because your body knew what is happening and it's doing what it's supposed to actually.
Yeah.
So,
which I think it's almost its own topic, but that is something that is also really hard, I think, for people to process.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's something where, okay, this is not a viable life.
Yeah.
And this fetus does not have everything that it needs.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. But to process that has to be very emotionally complicated, because you don't want to keep developing a baby that doesn't have everything in place, right? But it's still a loss. Yeah. And it's a tremendous thing to grieve. So I think it's really really complicated. Yeah.
And what is really frustrating, I'm really grateful I didn't run into this, but sometimes something is wrong with like the way that like your hormones are off or something. And so unfortunately how the American health system usually works is that they won't even do any tests until you have 3 miscarriages. So it could be your hormones. I had a friend who...
I did not know that. Excuse me?
I know. It's really messed up.
I did not know that.
Maybe it's not all healthcare systems, but
it's generally, it's in general. Okay.
And
wow. Okay.
I had a friend who she had, I think, 2 miscarriages, and they were like, we don't really know what's going on. And her OB ran this random test, and it turns out she just had like thicker blood. What? That was like weirdly clotting out what was going on. So she just put on aspirin and she was fine. So, I mean, sometimes it is like your body does need some like extra help with sustaining, but in general, it's like not anything that you could have done that would have,
right.
It's just,
you just don't know until you have tests that can kind of, determine if there's something off on any level.
Yes.
In your blood work.
I know.
That's crazy.
I know. And it's like, for me, in my opinion, some stuff, why don't they just run this in general the first time that even when you're pregnant the first time, just run a bunch of tests. Like, how's your progesterone? How's your estrogen?
And you could bypass it if you wanted to, but I just don't understand why there's all these preventative care measures that are taken by doctors or in pregnancy or in delivery, especially. Yeah. But there's not stuff like this that happens.
I know.
Until you're at a point where you have 0 other options or answers. Yeah. And it's just, I don't understand why it is that way.
Well, and this is not...
Sorry, I'm on my soapbox, but I don't get it.
And this is not with miscarriages, but like infertility, they won't... for infertility issues, they won't even start testing you for stuff until it's been a year of
12 months of trying.
which is insane to me because one, that's a really long time. And two, like I've had friends who it's like, okay, they started their testing. It still took another 2 years to get pregnant because of just, everything they had to go through. And I'm like, well, if they could have started that earlier, then I'm on another,
we're on topic.
I get frustrated with obviously the healthcare system because women tend to be told just wait, but why? Anyways.
When there could just be, some simple tests that would really save people a lot of heartache.
Or just,
time,
a lot. Yep.
Yeah.
Anywho,
So,
some more facts.
Yeah. And so that just kind of gives us a baseline to work from and to think about when it comes to the subject of pregnancy loss.
Yeah.
So
I did have one more fact.
Oh, you did?
Well, this fact goes into my story a little bit, and that's what.
So let's just transition into that then.
Okay. So I had what is considered a missed miscarriage, which is basically when the fetus baby had died, and my body just hadn't done anything yet. It was just hanging out.
I was shocked by this. I did not know what a miscarriage was.
So.
Because you mentioned that before the first time we recorded.
Yep.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these only happen in less than 3% of miscarriages. So basically it's like 3%. I have pregnancies on my fact sheet. So maybe that's what it was, but it doesn't happen very often. It's usually, this is not the way that it goes. But basically what happened with me is that I think I found out I was pregnant at like 6 weeks because I just never had a regular period, and it was one of those things, and I was very surprised. And I went into my first appointment for the first, when they checked the heartbeat, when they checked the baby at, I want to say it was like 8 or 9 weeks. So a few weeks later, everything looked great. We were like, oh, there's a baby, there's a heartbeat. It was great. We were just like, okay. And then you schedule some of your appointments ahead of time.
Follow-up appointments, yeah.
So that was like early December, and then I had my follow-up appointment like January 15th or something.
And I do remember in our previous conversation when we were talking about prenatal appointments, I mentioned that I was like, oh, it was so relieving and exciting to see the baby, the little like bean that comes up on the screen, and to hear the heartbeat and everything. And I remember you told me later on, you're like, oh yeah, I did not feel relief
with my current,
with your current daughter. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah. So it kind of shadowed everything, right?
Yeah. And I'll talk about this more in a little bit. But, so that, with our first pregnancy, we did see the heartbeat and we were very excited. But with our current daughter, when we went in for that appointment for her, I can't even remember if I looked at the monitor because it was just so heartbreaking the first time seeing the heartbeat. And then when I went up for my follow-up appointment, there wasn't a heartbeat. And so I think for me, it was just like, I don't want to see a heartbeat again. And then, a few weeks later, just like it not be there anymore. So I'll go into this more, but in a little bit, but how, at least for me, and a lot of women I've talked to who've had miscarriages, like having a miscarriage or pregnancy loss really overshadows it, or it can overshadow a pregnancy that is going well, because almost every single day you're like, well, today it could not be.
Right.
Because you've experienced it before.
You're kind of on edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I'll talk about that more in a little bit, because there's more things with that. But I had gone up for my follow-up appointment, a few weeks later, and I didn't have like a ton of symptoms with pregnancy either time, but I had just like the typical, just kind of tired, just kind of not feeling amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was texting some of my friends who had recently had kids, like, hey, I kind of don't really feel pregnant anymore. Like, I feel like my symptoms have all gone away. Is that how you guys? And I was like almost entering my second trimester, but I think it was like 12 weeks at that time.
But there is kind of a phase where that happens.
Yeah.
And I remember also being really nervous at one point and thinking, I just don't really feel pregnant anymore. So I think that is normal.
Yes.
But I do remember you saying this to me way back when. You said, yeah, I just didn't feel pregnant anymore.
It was just weird.
But I think you just know.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to kind of feel the baby just really not move a whole lot. You're not feeling any bubbles, or you're not feeling tired or nauseous. Or if your nausea lifts, you're kind of like, am I okay?
Yeah. Like, you're just like,
is everything okay?
Yes.
Yes. So you're always on edge when you're pregnant. But if you have experienced a loss already, I mean, oh my gosh.
It's just like, So when I was texting my friends, I was like, is this normal? And they were like, well, you're both, like, you're, nearing your second trimester. It's pretty normal to not feel as pregnant. Like some symptoms
But they're like, check with your OB though.
Yeah. And I was like, luckily I had my appointment that day. So I was like, okay.
Oh, thank goodness.
So when I went into my appointment, I sat down, the nurse was like, do you have any questions for the doctor? And I was like, I don't really feel pregnant anymore. And she was like, okay. Like, I don't even know if she wrote that down. It's like, well, I don't know, write down. And so she's like, well, so then I went in, and then for the fall, for the second appointment, they just do the Doppler, it's a Doppler, right? You just hear the heartbeat.
Yes. The topical.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were sitting there and she was doing it and she was like, oh, I can't really hear anything. Let's go do like an ultrasound. So
did you have an internal ultrasound again?
Okay, I did have another internal.
Did you love that?
It was my favorite thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you missed our last episode.
Go back and
I hate them so much. And so she was doing the internal one and she was like, I am really sorry, but like there isn't a heartbeat. And it's just kind of like, you're just like, just sit there like, I think part of me was kind of, I think I already knew. So it wasn't like.
But it doesn't decrease from the shock.
No, the shock was still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of like, that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. It was like it was the confirmation of how I felt, or like what I was thinking, was just kind of like, man, that's like what I was thinking.
But dang.
Yes. And I have like the best OB in the entire world, and she just sat with me, and we just like, I didn't cry at that point because I was just like,
well, you were in shock.
Well, and also I'm just like, well, what do I do? Because it's clear like I didn't know, and like nothing's happening. Like I think I was at like 12 weeks at that point or something, or like 11 or 12.
That's good. Yeah, that's a ways to go.
It had already been like 3 weeks that it had not had a heartbeat, because you can tell how big it is.
Really?
So nothing had happened. I hadn't had any spotting or anything.
That's so wild. So this goes back to the miscarriage.
That's why the miscarriage, because I had like no symptoms of having a miscarriage. Okay. So there's 3 options.
Okay, yeah, got it.
And there were 3 options to like complete the miscarriage. One was to wait, which I said no, thank you.
Yeah.
Because she was like, it could take like a month. She's like,
no one knows.
Nobody knows. Especially, right. She's like, you haven't had like any signs of it like completing, so I don't really know when that would be. She's like, I would advise against that. Okay. So the other option was a DNC, which I meant to look up what it stands for.
Okay.
But I forgot to. Anyways, it was DNC, but I would have had to go under anesthesia, which for most people that would be totally okay.
Yeah.
I did not want to do that because I had already, in the previous 4 months, had already gone under anesthesia twice to get my birth control out. Which is
different episode, folks. Yeah.
Good time. 2 surgeries.
Definitely have to talk about birth control. Actually, I don't know if that's on my list.
What's on the list?
It's got to go.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, maybe that was So I did not want to do anesthesia again. I was 3 times in 4 or 5 months.
It's just asking for trouble.
It's too much.
Yeah.
So I decided to go with, there's a medicine that you can take.
Yeah.
So I decided to go that route. So
naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that weekend is when I took the medicine, and basically you just take it and then it just flushes everything out.
Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to work. It's
it helps your body complete the process.
Yeah. It's not great. I mean, none of the options are great. The whole thing is not great. None of this is great. So
the whole idea of having to expel a fetus is horrible.
It sucks.
It just sucks.
It seems so
it is a natural thing that our bodies do normally, but it's so unnatural to emotionally navigate it.
But I have some wonderful, obviously my husband's wonderful, but I have some wonderful friends who that that weekend brought me food and just like watched TV with me, watched some movies, and just because I just like was home all weekend. Yeah. And so I mean that seemed to get everything out, and everything was going fine for a few weeks. I was still bleeding a little bit because just like I mean even after birth, you know how you just kind of like bleed, it's just like kind of getting
for days and days.
So I was bleeding and it was getting a lot better. And before I finish this story, because it gets kind of ridiculous, but there's a lot of surprises obviously about a miscarriage, just because I think I don't know, at least when I got pregnant, I just didn't expect it to happen. I just was like, oh, like I know my friends have had one, but you know, like whatever. I don't think it's gonna happen to me. So that in and of itself was very much a surprise, where it's like, oh, it really can happen. Like it can happen to anybody. Not that it will, but like it can. Mm-hmm. And just like there was, again, since I had a miscarriage, I just thought I had an idea of what a miscarriage would look like or what would happen. And just mine wasn't what I expected it to be. I was very just surprised by that.
Well, the whole process of your miscarriage is ridiculous. Yeah. It just kept going.
Yeah. So on that note. So
sorry.
No, it's fine. It really did. This is why it got very surprising.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had taken the medicine. It seemed to be all working. I was still bleeding a little bit, which is fine. But like I think it must have been 2 weeks after I took the medication, I started to bleed uncontrollably at work. Oh my! I was at work bleeding uncontrollably. Like I was going through a tampon every 20 minutes, which is so crazy. There's so many. My wonderful coworker had just like a pharmacy amount of tampons in her pharmacy. I couldn't think of the word. Like drugstore amount.
Stash.
It was crazy. I had none on me because I never am prepared for life, and she had so many. It was amazing. So I just used all her tampons up. And this is probably like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or maybe like noon.
Okay.
And my OB was like, I can see you at 4. And I didn't go home because my work was just closer to the office and whatever. It just made more sense. But I was just like, didn't get any work done.
Because I was in the bathroom changing your tampon all day.
My friend, my coworker, was like, do I need to take you somewhere? I'm like, she knew it was happening.
Were you like staying hydrated?
Yes, like chugging water.
God.
She's like, I think you're looking a little pale. I'm like,
yeah, you think? You're like, my iron is literally gone.
She's like, do I need to call your husband? I'm like, it's fine. It's fine.
Actually, not fine. It's not.
He knew what was happening.
He did. But still.
Anyway, so I finally got into my OB office and they like checked me and they're like, there's nothing left. Like there should be no reason that you're bleeding this heavily. But she gave me some medication to stop the bleeding, which I took, and it definitely mostly stopped it.
Do you think that you were bleeding just because of how your body reacted to that medication? Did they ever determine what it was?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay. Okay,
I'm getting to that.
Keep going then. Sorry.
And so I took the medication, and it mostly stopped it, but I was still bleeding. And I called my OB. She's like, you shouldn't still be bleeding. It's like medicine should stop it. But she's like, continue the medication as long as you're not bleeding uncontrollably again. Like it should be fine. So I took that medication for 2 weeks, and then I had another follow-up appointment with her, and she was like, "You're bleeding more than I thought you should be on this medication." So she's like, "Okay, we're gonna do a blood test." So they did a blood test, and it was my HCG levels were still high.
Oh,
not like crazy high, but they were at 80, which is, I don't know what week that is that you're pregnant, but it's like my body still thought I was pregnant.
Oh,
and
gosh.
So she was like, if it was at 100, I would have done a DNC, which I don't really know what that would have done because there was literally nothing in there.
Your body, I think hormonally thought you were still pregnant.
My body hormonally still thought I was pregnant. And so every week, so once I got that level back at 80, I got my blood checked every week. And it was like went from 80 till it was gone. So it went from 80 the next week, 40 the next week, 20 the next week. So it was just having itself. It was just really bizarre. My doctor was like, I have no idea why this is happening.
Wow.
And there was nothing they could do about it just because it was like it was my hormones that just were freaking. I just didn't know what was happening. So
well, it's almost like it happened and your hormones were out of sync with what had happened in your body and they were just trying to catch up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they just kept going because actually, no, they still thought you were pregnant.
Yeah, it was so bizarre.
Oh, my
And so it was like, I had this miscarriage, and then I, had the, medication. It was just like, it was like the miscarriage that never ended. And so when I had Googled, after I had my miscarriage, and before I took the medication those few days, I was like Googling, like, how long does it take to, like, for this all to, like, resolve? And it was like, it should take like only a week where, just kind of like a week or two, just kind of feel like back to normal. They're like at the most like 8 or 9 weeks. And I was like, 8 or 9 weeks, that seems insane. So mine lasted 8 or 9 weeks. So I kind of see where, yeah.
Okay.
So that was also just like a huge surprise because I kind of expected, again, a lot of my friends who have had miscarriages, they did a D&C.
Okay.
So it is a lot, it's just, but even with the D&C, I don't think my body would have, because it was my hormone level. It wasn't like because there was something in there.
Yeah. It didn't matter.
No.
The methodology, how you guys went about completing the miscarriage. Your hormones were out of whack.
Yes.
And that prolonged the process.
And so after I had my daughter, before I had my daughter, I asked my doctor, is that going to happen again?
Okay.
Because, after the miscarriage, my levels were just not figuring themselves out. So I asked, after I have my baby, is the same thing going to happen? She was like, I don't know. Because they don't know. So after I had my baby, I did, a few days after I had her, start bleeding uncontrollably again.
Stop.
But I got medication, and this time it was only like 2 days that I was bleeding.
Oh, man.
So I don't,
again, just going back to the fact that you and Deb have always said one and done.
I know, I'm just like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is, and that's what, I had mentioned this before, but again, Molly and I didn't really want to have kids, and so we got finally come to Dev and I came to the conclusion, or I came to the conclusion that, yes, we'll have a kid. And so when we got pregnant the first time, we were both really excited, saw the heartbeat, great. And then having the miscarriage, I was like, I don't want to have to keep doing this. Like, if we had had another miscarriage, I do not know if I would have kept trying. Just because it is just so heartbreaking. And it's just, for me, because that lasted so long, it was just like physically and mentally and emotionally just like draining.
That's a strain.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want to have to do that all again and just like over and over again.
And given, thank goodness that you didn't have to walk through that a second time, because given what happened after you gave birth to your daughter,
I know,
you probably would have gone through again, which I hate to say, but
just
it's
a whole. But
gosh, my heart is kind of heavy right now because I'm just thinking about even women that might listen to this, or other moms or, who have experienced something like this. And it's just, I did not have to go through a miscarriage in my pregnancy or anything like that. But I don't know.
It's a lot. And I'm a person who doesn't mind talking about it. Obviously, I'm talking about it very openly, because for me, not only were understanding facts about miscarriages really helpful for me, but also talking to my friends who had gone through it before was really, really helpful for me. And so I want to be that friend. I want to be that person for people who have questions or just need to talk. And just word vomit. Because I think it's just really helpful, especially, it's I got to the point where I knew I didn't do anything wrong, but still you just feel like you have to process a lot sometimes, or you're just what you had expected was going to happen, it wasn't going to happen anymore. And you're just kind of have to think through stuff and just kind of process it.
Yeah. What did you think, or what did you find helpful in terms of processing that and then deciding that you were ready to try to get pregnant again? What was that like for you?
Well, I had quite a few weeks to process it, so that was helpful before I could even start trying again.
But I feel like it's not okay for me to laugh. Sorry.
I laugh about it because it's just, to me, it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah. I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah, it was so crazy. So, we had a lot of time to think it through, think about it and think through things. And I think because we had come to the conclusion that we wanted to have a kid, we were going to have a kid, we were just let's just try again.
Okay.
And it wasn't for me this whole, I don't know, I don't know. I just feel like I was able to, with the help of my friends and other people, just be able to process it.
Okay.
Now, again, I don't know this for sure. This didn't happen, but if I had gone through another one, I think it would have been difficult to want to try again. Just because with one miscarriage, for me, I'm like, okay, it happens. Like,
You're like, I can get back on the horse and try again.
but for two, I think with two, that would have been a lot. And for my husband too, like he talked to me, and we've talked about it, and he's told other people too, like it was also just very difficult for him.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, I think it is really hard for the partner to have to go through that as well, because they're expecting this child to be in their life. They're growing their family, and now they're not anymore. So,
And especially given how many weeks along you were,
yes.
that's a significant amount of
Yeah.
time to process the idea and the
Yeah.
excitement of having a child.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying by any means that if it were to happen earlier, there's less excitement. Not at all. I just think that just compounds the effect of that experience for you guys.
Well, and too, after, and we had seen the heartbeat, which a lot of times the doctor is like, oh, there's like after you see the heartbeat, there's like a 2% chance that you'll have a miscarriage. Like, it really drops.
Really?
Yeah.
She said that?
That's what most doctors say. It's just kind of like,
I don't know if my doctor said that.
oh,
I don't know.
I don't know.
She might have. I
What happens at appointments, and who knows?
There's a lot that happens at appointments. So
But that's just kind of like, once you see the heartbeat, that's kind of pretty understood that it's like a really, like, way lower chance.
okay.
And then to be like, oh, but it did happen. So it's just like, you're kind of like, oh, you're gung-ho about it.
Right.
And then, but I do want to hit on like one last thing is, you mentioned it earlier, is how it impacted my pregnancy with my daughter, is that because of the miscarriage, I felt like I don't want to say every day because I feel like that's really dramatic, but like,
It's okay.
there was like little things where I'm like, if I didn't feel her kick for like 15 minutes, which is that can happen sometimes because they sleep.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh no, something's wrong. Or I had to like think through a lot of stuff because it was just like going through a miscarriage. You're like, oh, this can happen.
Well, you're on high alert
Yeah.
now. And it's like, even with your first pregnancy, I was so paranoid.
Yes.
But of course you were on high alert and just kind of anxious.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's crazy that you would have 15 minutes that goes by where you're like, oh my gosh.
And when you're pregnant in general, especially when they're kicking,
You're
it's a
hyper aware of
and
what's
just
happening.
constant reminder. Oh, this thing is in me.
Right. And so it's shocking. Like, it's shocking looking back. And it was shocking at the time to think how crazy it was when all of a sudden I just wouldn't feel anything.
Oh my gosh.
And it would just be like she's taking a nap.
Yes.
But I didn't know what to think. It was my first pregnancy. And if she was, kind of inactive or lethargic that day, it really scared me.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was a lot for you to kind of handle, even on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
That's a lot emotionally for 9 freaking
I know
months.
It's so long.
That's a long time to be like
long.
on edge.
Yeah. And the two things, like, one, when we were pregnant the first time, we told people right away just because I think we were just so surprised. We were like telling friends, family, we were just like, oh, this is happening.
Yeah.
And then with our daughter, we waited until 15 weeks. So, because we were just like, I told, I think 3 or 4 of my friends, and they didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my family.
Yeah.
Because, like, when we lost our first pregnancy, our whole family knew. And it was like, I felt so bad telling them because it wasn't just our family member, but it was also their family member. So, like, I think it just hit really hard, obviously. But, when I told my friends, they were very sad for me, but it wasn't their family members. It just doesn't. So when we were pregnant with our daughter, I was like, I'll tell some friends so I have support and people I could talk to about it, but I'm not going to tell my family until we're further along. Just because I don't want to, like, I would tell them eventually if we had lost the pregnancy, but it's just,
You wanted to protect them.
Yes, 100%. And then the other thing for me with a miscarriage that has impacted maybe not my pregnancy, but like how I view other people's pregnancies is that when people tell me they're pregnant, especially if it's early on, I get kind of nervous. And I'm not because because I know what happened to me. And I'm not saying it's going to happen to them, but I just get like, I'm praying this doesn't happen because you're so excited. But it actually doesn't matter when anybody ever tells me they're pregnant. I'm just like, I'm really hoping this doesn't happen to you. I don't think it will, but it's just like, because it happened to me, it's really hard to not have that, at least a thought in your head.
Or like transfer that anxiety into that person's situation, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before, but like, I think everyone has a different preference on when they tell people that they're pregnant. And it all comes down to personality.
Yes.
And it comes down to, okay, how private of a person are you? And how do you process your emotions or life events? And some of us are more private than others. Like I didn't tell anybody until I think I was like almost 3 months.
Well, yeah.
Because almost 4 maybe. Because I needed time to process it.
Yeah.
But in your case too, there was just more to this timeline.
Yeah.
You know, you were trying to consider the emotions of your family.
Yes.
And you're navigating the anxiety of this second pregnancy. And you're just trying to you and Deb are just trying to figure it out day to day. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably wise that you waited.
And my parents were like totally fine with us waiting. When we told them, they're like, we totally get it. I'm like, why you guys waited? And
they probably appreciate it.
I think they did.
I mean, I'm sure there was like a little...
Maybe a little bit.
But at the same time, they were probably just so excited.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's like, it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
It didn't matter.
So the one thing I always never know how to answer on medical forms, and there's some medical forms that will ask you how many pregnancies that you've had.
Oh, that's true.
And I don't know how to answer. I think that you're supposed to answer, I would answer 2.
But why don't they specify?
I know.
Full pregnancy or like how I don't know.
And I can't remember what, but I've had 4. It's always really confusing to me. So
I forgot that they ask stuff like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, when you're filling out stuff in the beginning of your pregnancy or for like insurance stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
There's so much to this. Like, this is just kind of, I mean, I could go on a lot, but I think that if you have experienced a miscarriage or you're going through one right now or pregnant for the first time and just anxious about this possibility, talk to people. I think it's really important, especially as women, to talk about topics like this because miscarriages, I think some people feel nervous to talk about them or just kind of ask about, I don't know. I think it's just kind of like is it taboo?
Taboo would be the word.
Yeah.
I think it's tricky because this topic, one, it's so personal.
It is.
It's so private. Everyone's situation and experience is different because based on how your body reacts, based on when it happens, based on the partnership that you have with the person you're having a child with. All of those factors really are, they're intimate.
They are.
And it's like, okay, maybe a lot of people know about it, but how do you process that? And how do you walk through that? It's really tricky. And I think that it's something that we need to be able to talk about somehow more. But it's also such a sensitive topic because you don't know what grief people are walking around with.
Yeah.
And so it's really tricky.
Yeah.
But I am so thankful, and I know that everyone who listened is really thankful that we got to hear your story, Ashley. And just thanks so much for, being willing to share all those details because I think it's probably exhausting to relive all of this, even though I know that you are someone that really cares about this and it's close to your heart and you really do want to talk about it, but it's still a lot.
Yeah. You gotta go back. You gotta figure about it.
You gotta open up the closet. So.
But if you have any questions, please reach out. Like, email us, surprisemommapod@gmail.com. I will talk to you. I will answer questions. I will just be there if you need somebody just to vent to. I think, again, that was like the most helpful thing for me, was just talking to somebody, talking to a friend, just kind of venting, just kind of asking questions and just kind of getting things out there to process, because it just is a lot and it's really emotional. So if you need, I am here. Email or message us on Instagram, or we're also on
We're on Spotify.
Yeah.
We are on Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube.
Yeah.
Hence the video.
So yeah, please just reach out. We would love to hear comments, questions, just really anything. But yeah, this is this topic I really do care a lot about, and I would like to see more women
Have a platform,
Yes.
or have, I don't know, a space
Yes.
to talk about it
Yes.
in the way that they need to.
Yes,
I think that's what you're trying
like.
to
I
say.
don't want to say that like they have to talk about it, but yeah,
Yeah.
feel a safe place to talk about it
Yeah.
if they want to.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was our goal
Yeah.
today. And yeah, it's good to be back.
It is good to be back.
It was good to hear what you had to say. So,
All right.
thanks.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.